sticking around for a long time. Take a close look at that and tell me if you see clouds like that normally here on the Puget Sound or anywhere.
I've taken several different courses on it from in the Nevada test site where they've detonated 900 and something odd nuclear weapons, which was fascinating, by the way. I've been to Mount Weather, Virginia, which is a great facility that has taught us a lot about radiation. So I've had a pretty good education on that, particularly when it comes to emergency response and that. Again, I approach all this from a response perspective. I'm used to being on a fire truck, and so many questions that I just don't know. And I hope that you're not offended if I just say, I don't know, because there's lots I don't know about this. Now, what's walked out, so I must have done all right. Okay. Now, we talked about those 4 isotopes, those 4 right there. They all emit different types of radiation. Now, again, lots of people are not aware that there's very, very different types of radiation. If we had an incident that's closer, and certainly if we had a hazardous materials incident, or I can think of lots of different scenarios, what would be helpful is to learn how to shelter in place. You guys,
what is our closest nuclear reactor?
Our closest nuclear reactor. Anyone have an idea where the closest nuclear reactor is?
In the harbor.
On the waterfront, maybe? It's not always there, of course. The closest fixed nuclear reactor that's active, I believe, is Hanford. Is that right?
Contaminated. So they may get some material. And remember, though, the ocean, whether we like it or not, the ocean is the great diluter. And it does just as good a job with this as it does with most of the things. You know, we've thrown a lot at it throughout humankind, but it still manages to process this stuff over time. So we may see some of that in the areas very close, and they'll be checking that. But again, and so that's the good thing about radiation. Radiation is a very spooky subject for everybody, you know, and it really gets a lot of anxiety up. But ultimately, from a hazmat standpoint, and I went to the same class as Brent did way back when, I kind of specialized in hazardous material response, or radiation response and hazardous materials. Ultimately, I found it was the best one for me to deal with because I can identify it, I can find the source.
Are we through with that talk about anything about nuclear?
Yes, for the most part. Did you have
I had one more question.
Sure.
How can you say definitively we have nothing to worry about if steam has been added to a reactor, a water-causing steam? And correct me if we're wrong, clouds are created from a particle bonded to water molecules. How can you say definitively that that can't come on the Japanese current directly to the west coast?
Because by the level of dilution will create a situation where there is not enough of it to cause any sort of health risk at this time.
What's diluting it?
The vast amount of atmosphere that it's going to pass through between here and there, and the vast amount of moisture, atmospheric moisture that it's going to, and wind that it's going to be going to. Some of it's going to be falling to earth in the rain in the ocean and so on.
What about rain here?
It's diluted by it. It's diluted by the atmosphere.
What about rain here? Are you measuring the rain for radiation levels?
Our radiation detectors, that's our radiation detector going on. Our radiation detectors do indeed measure the radiation in the rainfall as well.
And are those readings open to the public on a website you can provide tonight?
What's that? I'm sorry?
Could you provide the website for that information so we can see it online or something?
Washington State, NOAA, yes, thank you. NOAA has a direct link to it, and we can certainly help you get that information if you'd like. Just talk to one of my staff, and we'll get that out. But I think if you put in real-time radiation detection, if you Google that, you will come up with the site.
And just to remind you also that compared the incident we have in Japan compared to what happened in Chernobyl, Chernobyl is much, much larger. Again, we got distance on our side. I want to ask real quick, the alarm went off because I have some sources.
MOX wasn't used in those plants, though. MOX, plutonium and uranium wasn't used together like in this instance. So it's nothing we can compare it to in the past. Plutonium's being burnt in this.
It can be compared to the amount of release, and the isotopes may be different, although I'd have to think about that a little bit. But certainly, as radioactive isotopes, We can measure the amount of radiation, and we also can figure out the source fairly quickly because we know the sources over there, and thus look at the health implications of that, and that's exactly what's being done.
Dave,
Okay, thank you.
On the whodependsonyou.com website, there's also a link to our State Department of Health, which has real-time radiation monitoring.
Okay.
And so whodependsonyou.com will get you just about anything that you want.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Brett. Appreciate that.